Tempest in Teyvat, Rimuru's Elemental Odyssey by KabirSingh808. Shadows in Liu, The Gathering Storm. As Rimuru's group landed in the misty heights of Wayan Karst, he gently lowered ether to the ground, scanning the surroundings with a thoughtful gaze. The dense mist seemed to curl around ancient rocks, a reminder of the mysteries held within Liu's sacred lands. After a pause, Rimuru turned to Ether and Paimon, gesturing towards a narrow, winding path that led deeper into the rocky terrain. I think the Adeptus we're looking for might be just ahead if you continue along this route. Paimon tilted her head, looking up at Rimuru in surprise. Wait, so, you're not coming with us? She asked, eyes widening as she began to feel the weight of approaching a powerful Adeptus on their own. Rimuru shook his head with a reassuring smile. No, I'll be staying here. Alarmed, Paimon flitted closer to him. But what if the Adeptus decides to attack us? I mean, what if they think we're trespassers? Her voice took on a worried tone, hovering just above a whisper. A soft laugh escaped Rimuru as he nodded toward Ether, the usual calm glint in his eyes. Remember the elemental orb I crafted for you back at Dragonspine? He asked, and Ether nodded, pulling out the orb that glowed faintly with Rimuru's own energy. Good, Rimuru continued, his voice steady. If anything goes wrong or if you find yourselves in trouble, use it to call me. I'll get there right away. Both Ether and Paimon felt a bit more assured, but Paimon's curiosity wasn't satisfied. Okay, but, if you're so close by, why aren't you coming with us to see the Adeptus? Don't you want to help explain the situation? Rimuru took a slow breath, his gaze drifting across the mist-covered peaks. The Adepti are very sensitive to different types of energy. My demonic essence might trigger a hostile reaction from them, and the last thing I want is another fight with one of them, not after my encounter with that Adepti at Wangshu Inn. His expression softened as he glanced back at them. I'll stay here to avoid unnecessary conflict. Understanding dawned in Ether's eyes as he took in Rimuru's reasoning. It was clear that the Adepti, loyal guardians of Liu, wouldn't take kindly to any energy they deemed dangerous to their realm. Ether nodded, his resolve growing stronger. Paimon, though still slightly nervous, puffed herself up, her wings fluttering with a hint of renewed confidence. All right, we'll take care of it. But you'd better stay ready, okay? Rimuru gave them a firm nod. I'll be here if anything happens. Just take your time and explain things carefully, gaining their trust is important for all of us. As Ether and Paimon made their way up the winding mountain path to meet the Adepti, Rimuru lingered at his chosen spot, scanning the landscape below and remaining vigilant. He had advised Ether and Paimon to take their time and speak openly with the Adepti, but he also knew they could face unforeseen challenges on the way. Still, he reassured himself that he'd given Ether the elemental beacon he'd crafted at Dragonspine. If anything happened, they could signal him in an instant. While Rimuru kept a steady watch, his senses suddenly flared, alerting him to a large group approaching. He could make out their disciplined formation and the distinctive glint of armor as they ascended the mountain, a unit of Millilith soldiers moving in unison and with clear purpose. Recognizing this, Rimuru immediately unsheathed his katana and shifted into a defensive stance, anticipating a confrontation. But as the soldiers came into view, they stopped a few paces away, then unexpectedly stepped aside, forming two lines as they parted to reveal a single figure walking forward with poise. Rimuru's sharp gaze focused on the new arrival. She had fair skin, striking amethyst eyes with pupils shaped like slits, and waist-length hair that began in rich purple before fading into silvery tones at the ends. Her composed aura, laced with an undeniable air of authority, told him she was no ordinary visitor. Ciel's voice spoke up in his mind, offering information that confirmed his suspicions. She is catching the Yuhang of the Liu Kixing, Ciel informed him. Rimuru nodded subtly, acknowledging her rank internally. Her calm, confident steps conveyed that she didn't mean to strike immediately, but Rimuru kept his guard up, keenly observing her every move and analyzing the intentions of the soldiers standing by. When Ketching came to a halt a few steps away, she regarded him with a steady, assessing gaze. Rimuru held her gaze evenly and, after a measured silence, finally broke it by speaking in a calm but firm tone. I'm assuming you're not here for a fight. Ketching's amethyst eyes softened, though her demeanor remained formal and controlled. You assume correctly, she replied, her voice even and authoritative. I'm here to ask some questions, though I wouldn't object to a fair explanation from you as well. Rimuru relaxed slightly but kept his senses alert. I understand. I'm willing to cooperate as long as it helps clear up any misunderstandings, he replied smoothly. Ketching nodded, though she maintained her serious expression. Your presence here, especially after the events at the Rite of Dissension, has raised concerns. We know of your association with the Knights of Favonius, but such ties do little to explain your actions at such a crucial moment for Liu, she continued, her eyes sharp as they met his. Your swift departure from the terrace, in particular, has caused more than a few raised eyebrows among the KabirSingh. So I need to know, why were you there, and why did you flee? Rimuru understood her apprehension. From their perspective, his group's flight from the scene would seem suspicious. There are more complex matters at play than you might realize, he replied, carefully choosing his words. We were at the Rite of Dissension simply to observe, but when the death of Rex Lapis was declared, it was clear we were being blamed without cause. Ether, Paimon, and I didn't feel safe staying, so we left to avoid any unnecessary conflict. Ketching considered his words, her brows furrowing slightly. And yet you must realize how that looks to the KabirSingh. Running in such a situation would only amplify suspicion. Rimuru nodded. I'm aware, but it's not every day you're suddenly accused of god-slaying by the very people you were meant to ally with. And let me be clear, Ketching, he continued, meeting her eyes directly, our only intention is to clear our names and find out what really happened to Rex Lapis. A flicker of interest crossed Ketching's face as she listened to his calm explanation, though she kept her tone guarded. So, you claim you had no hand in the incident. That's correct, Rimuru answered firmly. In fact, we're on our way to meet with the Adepti to share our perspective. The Adepti might be our best chance to shed light on the true cause of Rex Lapis's death. At his mention of the Adepti, Ketching's eyes narrowed in consideration. She paused, seemingly weighing his words. Then perhaps, she began thoughtfully, we can keep this matter from escalating further, but only if your intentions remain as you say. I cannot ignore that your appearance and your companions raise more questions than answers. Then let me assure you, Rimuru said, his tone calm but earnest. My only intention is to uncover the truth. That is all. After a long silence, Ketching seemed to relent slightly, nodding. Very well, then. But know this, if the KabirSingh finds any sign of deception, there will be consequences. Rimuru nodded in understanding. I expect no less, he replied. As the conversation reached a pause, Ketching stepped forward, her expression resolute as she relayed Ningguang's request. Lady Ningguang has expressed her desire to meet with you and your group in person at the Jade Chamber, she explained, her tone conveying both authority and assurance. Rimuru raised a brow, his suspicion evident. And what if this is just a trap? Ketching sighed but held his gaze firmly. It's no trap, she replied calmly. What happened at the terrace was unexpected, even for us. Ningguang only wishes to discuss the incident directly with you. There is no ill will towards Rex Lapis, nor was any intention to harm you or your companions. The events at Yuheng Pavilion were merely a misunderstanding. Seeing her conviction, Rimuru slowly lowered his weapon, but he remained cautious. Ketching took out a sealed, formal letter and, with a measured step, approached Rimuru. This is a formal invitation to meet Ningguang. She is sincere in her intentions, she said, handing him the letter. Just as Rimuru accepted the letter, they heard voices approaching from further up the path. Ether and Paimon returned, looking both relieved and excited after their encounter with Moon Carver. Paimon, still a bit shaken, was chattering nervously to Ether. Did you feel that presence, Ether? Moon Carver's presence was just overwhelming. She shivered but quickly looked around. So, where are we off to next? As they descended toward Rimuru, they noticed the group of Millilith soldiers encircling him and Ketching. Paimon gasped in shock. Wait, how did they get here so fast? She whispered anxiously. Ether instinctively stepped forward, hand on his sword, preparing for a possible confrontation. Rimuru glanced at them with a small, reassuring smile. Oh, you're back, he said, noticing Ether's tense posture. Don't worry, there's no need for a fight. Let me explain what happened. He recounted his conversation with Ketching and the invitation from Ningguang to meet her at the Jade Chamber. Ether and Paimon exchanged glances, a mix of surprise and uncertainty in their expressions. So, Ningguang actually wants to talk to us? Paimon asked cautiously. Rimuru nodded, showing them the letter. It seems she wants to clear things up and discuss the situation directly. It might be our chance to get some answers and understand Liu's stance a bit better. Keqing observed them quietly, noting the trust Rimuru's group had in him. With a final nod to Rimuru, she stepped back, gesturing to the path down the mountain. The Millilith will escort you to the Jade Chamber. I'll accompany you to ensure there are no further misunderstandings. As Keqing mentioned that the Millilith and she would escort them to the Jade Chamber, Rimuru gave Ether and Paimon a small smile, then handed each of them a mask, a perfect replica of his own. Paimon tilted her head, confused as she held up the mask. What's this for? Rimuru chuckled. So no one can recognize us, aside from the Millilith and Keqing here. Ether raised an eyebrow. Why go to such lengths? Rimuru glanced over his shoulder, lowering his voice. There's a strong chance the Fatui are watching every move in Liu right now. If they see us walking openly with the Millilith and one of the Keqing, they'll realize we've switched sides. We still need to get close to Chilled and gather more information, so this way, we can keep them off our trail a little longer. Keqing nodded in understanding. Rimuru is right. It would raise suspicions if the Fatui knew that you've been working with us. They're crafty, and if they think you've allied with the Keqing, they might alter their plans or disappear before we learn anything. Rimuru fastened his mask, glancing at Ether and Paimon. This way, we have the advantage. If we're careful, they'll assume we're still just tourists or adventurers. Paimon placed her mask on, adjusting it as she muttered, well, at least we're incognito. Rimuru looked to Ether and Paimon, who both nodded, their expressions determined. The group prepared themselves, knowing that the upcoming meeting could either clarify their purpose in Liu or deepen the tension around them. As the group nodded in agreement, they joined Keqing and the Millilith, beginning their ascent toward the Jade Chamber. The sun was setting over Liu Harbor, casting a golden glow on the bustling city below, with merchants calling out their wares and the scent of freshly cooked dishes filling the air. Paimon floated closer to Rimuru, curiosity lighting up her face. Hey, Rimuru. Wouldn't it be way faster if we just flew up there using your wings? You could carry us up, and we'd reach the Jade Chamber in no time. Rimuru chuckled, glancing up at the grand structure floating in the sky. I thought about that, but it wouldn't exactly be a good plan. Flying straight up to the Jade Chamber without warning could make us look like intruders. Ningguang's guards might not take too kindly to unannounced visitors appearing from the sky. They'd probably start firing arrows at us before we even landed, and I'd really rather not deal with that kind of greeting. Paimon shivered, her eyes widening. Yeah, getting rained on by a bunch of arrows doesn't sound fun at all, she admitted, wincing at the thought. But it would be so cool to just swoop in. Rimuru grinned. I'm with you, Paimon, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Besides, he continued, Ningguang sent us a formal invitation. It's only polite to meet her the right way. Just flying straight up without notice wouldn't exactly be showing respect. Keqing, who had been listening quietly, gave Rimuru a nod of approval. You're absolutely right. Ningguang values respect and formalities. Entering the Jade Chamber properly will definitely make a better impression. She gestured towards the grand staircase that led to the teleportation device, one of the only safe ways to reach the chamber. Ether, carrying the same thoughtful look as Rimuru, gave a small nod. Yeah, and the last thing we need is any more misunderstandings. The group began to ascend the stone steps toward the teleportation platform, a symbol of Liu's reverence and devotion to their heritage. Citizens stopped to watch the group as they passed, noticing the Millilith escort and Keqing's presence. It wasn't every day that such an unusual group was seen walking toward the Jade Chamber. A few children pointed excitedly, and elders nodded respectfully. All right then, Paimon sighed, glancing back at the towering Jade Chamber one last time. Guess we're doing this the formal way. But it better be worth the long walk. Rimuru laughed as they continued along the path. When they arrived at Yujing Terrace, the Millilith dispersed to resume their regular duties, leaving only Keqing, Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon. Keqing led them to a well-dressed man with a composed expression named Buyan, the appointed guide to the Jade Chamber. After a brief exchange, Buyan nodded and directed the group to a circular platform nearby. As they all stepped onto it, the platform began to rise slowly, gently lifting them off the terrace and guiding them upward toward the jade chamber. Rimuru looked around, taking in the view of Liu Harbor growing smaller below them. The sensation and the smooth ascent reminded him of an elevator, a technology from his old world that had once been so common. He chuckled, commenting, "Quite a convenient bit of technology you have here. Very practical." Ketching glanced at him with a small smile. "It's not quite as sophisticated as it may look. The mechanism relies more on plaustrite named sunset vermilionite. Its unique floating properties of plaustrite allows the chamber and this platform to hover." Her words were matter of fact, but there was pride in her tone as she spoke about Liu's unique advancements. Rimuru nodded, feeling a mix of nostalgia and intrigue. "Still, it's impressive in its own way. It almost feels like one of the elevators from my world." Paimon, overhearing, tilted her head. "Elevators? What's that?" Rimuru explained, "They're a type of platform that carries people up and down inside tall buildings. They were very common in my world. This one here is like a blend of that technology and magic, well, this plaustrite to be precise." Ether listened quietly, intrigued by Rimuru's description of his previous world. Meanwhile, Paimon looked both amazed and a little envious. "Whoa, elevators must be super helpful. Imagine how easy it would be to get around without having to walk up all these stairs." As they continued ascending, the jade chamber loomed closer, its grandeur and elegance becoming more apparent with each passing moment. Carved intricately with patterns symbolizing Liu's history and culture, the chamber stood as a monument to the city's dedication to Rex Lapis. Paimon and Ether gazed in awe, and even Rimuru found himself admiring the craftsmanship. Finally, the platform came to a gentle halt, placing them just outside the ornate doors of the jade chamber. As the platform settled gently on the polished marble floor of the jade chamber, Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon stepped off to find Ningguang waiting for them. The elegant chamber was a breathtaking sight, with intricate designs and decorations that spoke to both its grandeur and the careful thought behind every detail. Ningguang stood poised, her flowing attire accentuating her commanding presence. Accompanying her were two trusted assistants, their expressions calm and professional, suggesting they were well versed in handling important affairs. Ningguang greeted them with a slight, welcoming smile. "I've been expecting you," she said, her voice smooth yet authoritative. She turned her gaze to Ketching, a hint of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you for your hard work, Ketching." Ketching nodded in acknowledgement, stepping aside to join Rimuru and the others. Ningguang then formally introduced herself, reiterating her position as the Tianquan of Liu. Rimuru returned the gesture, introducing himself and his companions once again. "Since this is a formal meeting, we apologize for arriving without a gift. It seems we came empty-handed," he stated, his tone respectful but laced with sincerity. Ningguang shook her head gently, a gesture that suggested she appreciated their honesty. "There's no need for formalities. Your presence here is a gift in itself." As they entered the expansive room, Ether, his eyes wide with wonder, remarked, "It's a remarkable place, this jade chamber." Ningguang's answered, "It is indeed. Building this has been a dream of mine since childhood. The moment I began learning the art of commerce, I started saving for this ambition. When it was first constructed, it was no larger than a single room." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to sink in, and gazed out at the sweeping expanse of Liu Harbor below. "Through determination and hard work, it gradually grew to what you see now. It's grand enough to blot out the moon from the sky, and one day, I envision it becoming large enough to cast a shadow over all 7 nations." Rimuru and Ether exchanged a quick glance, silently sharing their thoughts. Ningguang's ambitions were nothing short of immense. Paimon, her eyes wide with awe, could barely contain her excitement. "Wow, that's big dreams," she exclaimed, her voice almost a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the dreams themselves. Ningguang smiled knowingly, as if she sensed the intrigue in their minds. She was accustomed to inspiring others, yet she had deeper motives behind her ambitions, something that lingered just beneath the surface of their conversation. As Ningguang finished speaking, she leaned slightly forward, her expression a mix of curiosity and intrigue. "I've been in close contact with the acting Grandmaster Jean of the Knights of Favonius," she began, her voice steady. "I heard of your impressive deeds in Mondstadt, and ever since your group arrived in Liu, I've had my ears and eyes attuned to your activities." Rimuru's mind raced at this revelation, and a conclusion quickly formed. He realized that the figures watching them at Wangshu Inn must have been Ningguang's people. However, he chose to keep this thought to himself for now. Paimon, ever the curious one, turned to Rimuru and exclaimed, "So the people keeping an eye on us are related to Ningguang?" Rimuru nodded, confirming her suspicion. "It seems that way," he replied, casting a sidelong glance at Ningguang. Ningguang's lips curled into a small smile at their deduction. "I didn't expect you to realize you were being watched. Most people remain oblivious." Rimuru awkwardly rubbed the back of his head, a sheepish smile playing on his lips. "Well, I think the man who took an empachement from the owner of Wangshu Inn and tried to run to Liu may have given you some information about us," he explained, recalling the encounter that had been interrupted by Xiao. Ningguang nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, I'm aware. He even submitted a notice for retirement after witnessing that incident." Rimuru let out an awkward laugh at the thought. "I didn't want to hurt him. I was just being cautious," he admitted, a hint of embarrassment creeping into his tone. Ningguang's gaze sharpened, her interest piqued. "I'm also very interested in how you managed to face Xiao, one of the adepti, and make your way out unscathed," she continued, her tone suggesting she suspected there was more to the story. Rimuru raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Oh, so you know about that too?" he asked, genuinely intrigued. "News travels fast in Liu, especially when it concerns one of our adepti," Ningguang replied smoothly. "I'd like to hear your side of the story." As Rimuru contemplated how much to reveal, he could feel the weight of Ningguang's gaze upon him, a mix of admiration and wariness. It was clear that she was not just interested in the events themselves but also in the implications they had for Liu's future. The conversation had taken a turn, and he knew he needed to tread carefully as he decided what to disclose next. Ningguang gestured toward the inner chambers of the Jade Chamber, inviting the group to follow her inside for a more private discussion. The grand hall they entered was lavishly decorated, with ornate designs inlaid on the walls and a wide, intricately carved table in the center. Golden accents shone from every corner, casting a soft glow over the room as Ningguang took her seat at the head of the table. She signaled Keqing to sit beside her, while Rimuru, Ether, and Paimon found seats across from her. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," Ningguang said, her tone formal yet inviting. As they settled in, Ningguang folded her hands neatly on the table, her sharp gaze sweeping over each of them. "I understand you've been through quite an ordeal," she began, "and that the circumstances around Rex Lapis's death have cast suspicion upon you." Rimuru exchanged a glance with Ether, who nodded slightly in silent agreement. He felt a tension in the air. Ningguang wasn't merely offering a friendly chat, this meeting was a calculated move, one in which every word mattered. Ningguang continued, "I want to hear your account of the events surrounding Rex Lapis's death, particularly the sequence of events you experienced, and any information that might help Liu understand the truth behind this." Ether leaned forward slightly, beginning to recount their experiences leading up to the rite of dissension, while Paimon eagerly added her commentary, filling in details. Rimuru listened closely, carefully considering how much to share about the Fatui's involvement and his suspicions regarding the fake body of Rex Lapis. When Ether finished, Rimuru decided to speak up. "We believe there's more to the story than what we initially thought," he began, his tone calm but firm. "We encountered strange individuals along the way, and I have reason to believe that they may have been orchestrating events to disrupt Liu's peace." Ningguang nodded, her expression thoughtful. "And these individuals, do you suspect they are connected to anyone in particular?" "Indeed, the Fatui," Rimuru replied, choosing his words carefully. "Their involvement is likely more complex than it appears on the surface. This isn't just about accusing onlookers or disturbing a ceremony. I suspect they aim to turn the adepti and Keqing against each other." Ningguang's gaze hardened slightly. "I expected as much from the Fatui, yet hearing it from you confirms a number of suspicions I held as well," she admitted. "Their interference is not only bold but entirely self-serving. They will stop at nothing to achieve their goals, regardless of the cost to our people." Keqing's eyes narrowed, her usual sharp focus intensifying. The adepti are revered protectors of Liu, and their judgment carries immense weight. If they, too, are deceived, the consequences could be severe. Paimon shifted uncomfortably, clearly unnerved by the gravity of the situation. "So, what should we do now? Are we still going to be blamed for this? She asked. Ningguang leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms thoughtfully. With the Adepti's support, the truth could be presented clearly and fairly. But to reach that point, you will need to gain their trust completely. She paused, looking directly at Rimuru. If you're willing to continue working alongside the Adepti, I will ensure that you have the protection of the KabirSingh. Rimuru nodded, his resolve steady. We'll do what's necessary to set things right. Ningguang's gaze softened, a rare hint of approval crossing her features. Then I believe we have a mutual understanding. Together, we may just be able to prevent Liu from falling into the chaos our enemies seek. As Ningguang's cool, appraising gaze held steady again on Rimuru, the weight of expectation in the room grew almost palpable. Her carefully chosen words hinted at her belief that Rimuru and his group might have answers regarding the recent surge of corrupted monsters plaguing Liu and possibly the entire region. Rimuru, still wearing a calm smile, felt the tension deepen as he realized that Ningguang was testing him, and she expected the truth. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, feigning innocence, and asked, with a light chuckle, why she would think they had knowledge of such serious matters. On cue, Ether and Paimon sat still, uneasily silent, letting him lead the conversation. Internally, though, Rimuru couldn't help but wonder just how he ended up being the diplomatic spokesperson. He was used to dealing with powerful figures back in his world, but these two, Ningguang with her poise and perceptive eyes, and Keqing with her unrelenting determination, were pushing him to his limit. Why are all these mature women so hard to deal with? He thought with a mix of amusement and nervousness. Keqing, however, was far from amused. In a flash, her hand slammed down on the table, the sharp sound reverberating through the room and startling even Rimuru. People's lives are at stake, she shouted, her voice a sharp reprimand. Her fierce gaze bore into him as if to demand that he abandon his casual demeanor and take the matter seriously. For once, even Rimuru felt caught off guard by her intensity, sensing the depths of her concern for Liu's people. He felt a twinge of respect, though her sudden challenge had nearly made him lose his composure. Keqing, Ningguang spoke in a calm but authoritative tone, gently reining her in. Let's not pressure them unduly. I believe they fully grasp the gravity of the situation. She cast a knowing look toward Rimuru, her polite smile filled with subtle expectation. Rimuru could see that she wasn't fooled by his earlier calm facade and wanted straightforward answers. Her manner was friendly but unyielding, and Rimuru could tell that she would settle for nothing less than the truth. Internally, Rimuru groaned, realizing he had no easy way out. He raised his hand in a light-hearted show of surrender. All right, you win, he said, letting his smile slip into a more serious expression. You're right to be concerned. The appearance of these monsters is no mere accident. They're the result of a powerful, destructive force from my world, a force that's tied to a creature named Ivaraj. Ningguang and Keqing both went quiet, their focused gazes urging him to continue. Ether and Paimon exchanged a worried look but remained silent, listening intently as Rimuru began his explanation. This entity, Ivaraj, is a dragon, he began, his voice carrying the weight of the danger Ivaraj represented. And not just any dragon. He's a world-destroying dragon with powers that defy life and death. His influence doesn't simply end lives, it warps them, turning living beings into shadows of themselves, corrupted by a darkness that knows no boundaries. He watched as Ningguang's brow furrowed in thought, while Keqing's eyes took on a hardened focus. Rimuru continued, this corruption isn't random. It's a direct result of Ivaraj's influence, I've faced it before, and I recognize the signs. Pausing briefly, Rimuru could see the intensity in both women's gazes. Keqing looked almost as though she wanted to launch into a flurry of questions, while Ningguang's thoughtful look conveyed her contemplation of the gravity of the threat. Rimuru took a deep breath and pressed on, figuring it would be better to lay everything on the table. There are forces in this world, factions and individuals, who are looking to exploit this corruption and its destructive potential for their own ends. And I've come across these forces in my travels. He let his words linger, watching as both women processed the information. Keqing's frustration was clear, her lips pressed into a thin line, but her respect for Rimuru's honesty was also visible in her softened stance. So, she said, her voice quieter but no less intense, you're telling us that this corruption is something you've dealt with before. Rimuru nodded, his tone calm but resolute. Yes, and I fully intend to stop it here too. This corruption is dangerous to everything it touches, but I won't allow it to continue spreading. As someone who has been fighting against threats like this, I know what needs to be done to contain it." A brief silence filled the room as Ningguang finally nodded, a glimmer of approval in her expression. "Thank you, Rimuru. I understand that you didn't have to tell us this much. We appreciate your willingness to share this information." Her tone carried an air of genuine gratitude, but it was tempered with the cool wisdom of a leader who would be watching closely for any signs of inconsistency. She'd given him her trust, though it was clear she expected him to follow through. Ketching let out a slow breath, her posture finally easing as she looked at Rimuru with a new respect, albeit still guarded. "Just make sure that whatever actions you take, you're not putting Liu's people at risk." Rimuru gave her a reassuring nod, a small smile on his face. "I promise. This world's people deserve safety, and I'll do what I can to ensure that." As the intensity in the room eased slightly, Rimuru felt a surge of relief. His internal monologue chuckled, he'd made it through what felt like a gauntlet. As the tension in the room slowly dissipated, Ether turned to Rimuru with a knowing look. "I think this information, it's not the kind you'd just share freely." Paimon nodded in agreement, her gaze flitting from Ningguang to Ketching. Both women observed the group with a steady, discerning gaze, their expressions hard to read. The atmosphere hung heavy with anticipation, and Rimuru, realizing that the group awaited his response, finally gave a slight, reassuring smile before breaking the silence. "You're absolutely right, Ether," Rimuru began, his tone cautious but sincere. "To be honest, I hadn't intended to share any details about Ivaraj, or even hint at the existence of these corrupted monsters, until I felt sure about who I could trust. Information like this, it can't be taken lightly." He looked at Ningguang and Ketching with a steady gaze. "If I'm going to talk about something this dangerous, I need to know that the people I'm sharing it with are as serious about protecting lives as I am." The words hung in the air for a moment. Ningguang and Ketching both listened with quiet intensity, and neither moved nor spoke, which Rimuru took as a sign to continue. He thought carefully before speaking again, choosing each word deliberately. "Honestly, that's not a small judgment to make. But when Ketching stood up earlier, when she looked right at me and made it clear that people's lives are on the line, that's when I knew. Her reaction was genuine, her anger was real. And you could say I've learned to recognize when someone's truly motivated by protecting others. It's become a habit of mine, you could say," Rimuru admitted with a slight, knowing smile. "Being around people who share that same determination, it tends to teach you how to spot the ones who are serious about their duty." Ketching's stern expression softened slightly, a hint of surprise flashing across her face. She seemed to absorb Rimuru's words with a new understanding, as if realizing the weight of what he was entrusting them with. She gave a firm, approving nod, acknowledging his assessment. Ningguang, meanwhile, studied Rimuru with a thoughtful look, her smile returning but tinged with a different quality now, one of respect. She spoke next, her voice calm but appreciative. "You're more perceptive than I thought," she said, nodding slowly. "In Liu, we need people who think beyond themselves and put the well-being of others above all else. That's the type of individual we aim to support here." Her gaze held Rimuru's. "Thank you for trusting us, Rimuru. And rest assured, that trust is something we take very seriously." Relieved to see his words had landed well, Rimuru relaxed a little and gave her a grateful nod. "Then we're in agreement. Let's work together to find out how to contain Ivaraj's influence, maybe even stop it for good. Because if this goes unchecked, well, I think we can all agree we don't want to know what happens next." After the room settled, Ketching and Ningguang delved deeper into Rimuru's account, their expressions shifting between curiosity and a newfound determination. They discussed Ivaraj in quiet, intense tones, focusing on Rimuru's explanation of their past struggle, the power struggle between them, and how their mutual sealing had led him to this world. Rimuru described his initial hope that Ivaraj hadn't followed him, only for the telltale attacks of corrupted monsters in Mondstadt to confirm his worst fears, that the world-devouring dragon was here, somewhere in Teyvat. Yet, even now, Rimuru chose to conceal any mention of Feldway and his potential involvement, cautious of disclosing too much too soon. The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on Ningguang's shoulders as she met Rimuru's gaze with a hardened resolve. "So, these monsters and this dragon. They've come here not just by chance. This is more than just an attack, it's a signal, a warning of what's to come. She paused, contemplating the gravity of their situation, before adding, and the fact that you're connected to it all suggests you're no ordinary traveler. Rimuru nodded, the atmosphere thick with the significance of what he was about to say next. I hadn't planned to reveal this information to anyone, he admitted, looking from Ningguang to Keqing with respect. It's not easy, trust me, but after seeing the seriousness in your eyes, Keqing, and the strong resolve you both carry for protecting the people, I realized this was the right choice. Keqing's expression softened just slightly at his acknowledgement. Protecting lives is our priority. If this Ivaraj is here, then we need to know everything we can to prepare. Keqing nodded firmly. Thank you for trusting us, Rimuru. Rimuru took a breath, then leaned forward, his expression serious once again. But be warned, this is no ordinary threat. Ivaraj isn't just powerful, his influence can spread like wildfire, corrupting anything in its path. The attacks on Mondstadt are only the beginning. If he awakens fully, it's anyone's guess how devastating the impact could be on all of Teyvat. Keqing and Ningguang absorbed his words in silence, exchanging glances that spoke of mutual understanding. Rimuru noticed the fierce resolve in their eyes and felt a spark of relief. He was no longer alone in this fight. Ningguang finally broke the silence, her voice steady. Rest assured, Rimuru. Liu will stand by you in this fight. And while we may not fully understand Ivaraj or his power, we understand the need to protect our world and people. You have our support. As the group wrapped up their plans, Rimuru leaned back and sighed, feeling the weight of the conversation lift just slightly. It's been a while since we last saw those corrupted monsters, but I have a feeling they might be preparing for another attack soon, he said, his voice cautious. We need to stay on our guard. The group nodded in agreement, feeling the urgency settle in once again, but relieved to have a shared purpose. The heavy atmosphere gradually lightened as Paimon turned to Ningguang with an expectant look. So, does that mean we're finally in the clear? We didn't kill Rex Lapis, after all. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of relief and hope, drawing a small laugh from ether. Ningguang's calm smile was reassuring. Yes, you don't have to worry about that anymore, she replied, a hint of amusement in her gaze. The truth of Rex Lapis' situation will be handled internally. You're free to walk around Liu without concern. Paimon's face lit up, practically glowing with relief. Phew. Paimon was getting tired of hiding out. She exclaimed, spinning joyfully in the air. This means we can explore Liu without having to look over our shoulders. Ether chuckled, and even Rimuru allowed himself a slight smile, watching as Paimon's cheer spread to the rest of the group. Thank you, Ningguang, Rimuru added sincerely. This cooperation means a lot, and having allies we can rely on is a big step forward in dealing with whatever comes next. Ningguang nodded gracefully, acknowledging his gratitude. Liu is no stranger to facing great threats, and now with friends like you all, we're stronger together. Let's just make sure to keep each other informed. Whatever moves we make will be stronger in unity. Paimon looked around with wide eyes, her curiosity unabated. So, what's our next step? We already told one of the Adepti that Morax, Rex Lapis, faked his own death. She floated closer to Ether and Rimuru, a questioning look on her face. Ningguang and Keqing exchanged a glance, their expressions shifting to alertness as Keqing's brow furrowed. Wait a moment. Did you say Rex Lapis is still alive? She asked, her tone edged with disbelief and intrigue. Rimuru nodded. Yes, that's what I believe. I can't confirm his location or intentions, but the corpse that fell was just an empty vessel. If Rex Lapis truly wanted to pass on, the Adepti would have felt his departure, but that hasn't happened. The ritual and the spectacle, it's more than it seems. He paused, catching Keqing's piercing gaze, and continued, perhaps he wanted to witness how his people would react, to test Liu's strength and unity without his direct influence. Keqing took a moment to process, her hand gripping her sword tightly. I never imagined, if he's watching from the shadows, he could be assessing how capable we are without him, she murmured, half to herself. Then, looking at Rimuru and the others, she said, this would change everything about how we handle things from now on. Ningguang nodded, her expression contemplative yet calm. If Rex Lapis indeed faked his own death, then his intentions are likely more complex than we imagined. We'll need to tread carefully. The Adepti may need more convincing or even direct evidence. She turned to Rimuru. But what do you think, Rimuru? Knowing this, do you still intend to stay involved with Liu's affairs, or will your path lead you elsewhere? Rimuru looked thoughtful. My own goals align with protecting this world from the threats lurking around, including corrupted monsters, and if Rex Lapis is involved somehow, I'll continue to investigate. He paused, the faintest of smiles appearing. But more than that, I've come to appreciate the people here and the bonds we've built. That's worth protecting too. Keqing and Ningguang exchanged approving glances, seemingly satisfied with his commitment. Paimon floated around, beaming. Looks like we're in this together, then. Liu, Mondstadt, and everyone else, we're all part of one big, united team. As Ether voiced his question, concern clouded his expression. So, what now? Moon Carver wanted us to reach out to the other adepti and inform them of the situation. And then there's the Fatui, how are we supposed to handle them? Rimuru considered the weight of the task, thoughtfully tapping his chin. Well, finding the other adepti seems like our next step. The more they know, the better we can plan for any attacks or strange occurrences they might sense in their territories. Ningguang folded her arms, a look of steely resolve crossing her face. As for the Fatui, leave them to me. Their meddling in Liu won't be tolerated, and I'll make sure our borders remain vigilant. Whatever they're scheming here, I'll do everything in my power to counter it. Rimuru nodded, appreciating her confidence. Good. I'll also keep an eye on their movements. If they're after something related to the corrupted monsters or Rex Lapis, then we'll need to be 2 steps ahead of them. Keqing, who had been listening quietly, now spoke up. And if the adepti are informed of this, they may keep watch on the hidden areas around Liu. With all of us cooperating, the Fatui's schemes should be much harder to carry out unnoticed. Paimon floated up, her tone hopeful. So, it sounds like everyone's in agreement. We'll inform the adepti, Ningguang will handle the Fatui's plotting in Liu, and Rimuru will watch over things from the shadows. Ether gave a determined nod. Right, we each have our part to play. Rimuru turned to Ether, his expression serious as he began outlining their next steps. Ether, I need you and Paimon to find the other adepti and inform them about the Fatui's plans and Rex Lapis's death. The adepti need to know the real story, especially if the Fatui are scheming something dangerous. Ether nodded in agreement, his eyes reflecting the gravity of the task. Got it. We'll get the message to them as soon as possible. I'm sure they'll want to know exactly what's happening. Paimon, hovering beside Ether, put on a determined face. Yes, we'll make sure they understand the Fatui can't be trusted. We'll find all the adepti, no matter where they're hiding. Rimuru turned to Ningguang, who had been observing their conversation with a keen, calculating look. Ningguang, he said, meeting her gaze directly, I'd like you to keep up your investigation of the Fatui's activities here in Liu and outside the region. We need to know what they're planning, but we also need to be cautious. It's too risky to pass this information through traditional means, they may have their eyes everywhere. Ningguang nodded, the fire of determination flashing in her eyes. I understand. I'll monitor their movements closely, and rest assured, I'll do whatever it takes to keep Liu safe. Rimuru nodded, then reached into his bag and pulled out a small, elegant glass orb filled with swirling elemental energy, the same type of device he had given Ether on Dragonspine to communicate with him from a distance. Use this to send me any updates. With the Fatui watching us, it's best to avoid sending messages through the usual routes. This orb will allow us to stay in touch without drawing attention. Ningguang carefully took the orb, studying it with appreciation as she held it up to the light. Thank you, Rimuru. This will be invaluable. I'll make sure to keep it secure, and I'll contact you immediately if I learn anything important. Rimuru then turned to Ether and handed him another orb, similar to the one Ningguang held. Keep this with you too. If you come across anything critical, use this. Just infuse it with a bit of your energy, and I'll receive the signal. We need to stay coordinated, and this will keep us linked even if we're far apart. Ether took the orb, examining its intricate design before nodding resolutely. Understood, Rimuru. We'll make sure to stay in touch if anything urgent comes up. Paimon hovered closer, her face still reflecting a mix of excitement and caution. So we're like some sort of secret communication network now. Wow, this is starting to feel really important. Rimuru gave a small smile. It is, Paimon. With so many eyes on us, especially those of the Fatui, we can't afford to be careless. This way, we'll be able to respond quickly without letting them know we're onto them. As Ether, Paimon, and Rimuru donned their masks, Rimuru's wings unfurled with a gentle yet powerful glow, stretching out from his back. He extended a hand to Ether, who accepted with a nod, and together they took off into the night sky. Rimuru's wings carried them swiftly and quietly, lifting them high above Liu Harbor as the city lights faded beneath them. From the edge of the Jade Chamber, Ningguang and Keqing watched them vanish into the starlit horizon. Keqing turned to Ningguang, her brows slightly furrowed. You believed in them pretty quickly. Aren't you at least a bit cautious? Ningguang's gaze remained on the fading figures, thoughtful but calm. I didn't see any trace of malice or deception in his words or in his eyes, she replied. He's not someone looking to harm Liu, and I've learned to trust my instincts about people. Keqing nodded, though her expression still reflected a hint of reservation. I see. Still, it's better to remain vigilant. I'll keep a close watch on anything unusual and, of course, on the Fatui's movements in Liu. Ningguang smiled subtly, approving Keqing's proactive stance. Yes, do that. And Keqing, she added, her tone softening yet still firm, let's keep everything we discussed on the Jade Chamber between us. This information is too sensitive to fall into the wrong hands. The Fatui are always lurking, and we can't afford any slips. Keqing nodded, her resolve renewed. Understood. I won't let anyone find out about our plans. As Keqing turned to survey the city, Ningguang watched her, knowing that the future of Liu rested on the strength of individuals like her, and, hopefully, on the newfound alliance with the unusual visitors who now flew through the night sky. Rimuru's group descended gracefully near the base of Mt. Palau, the towering mountain that loomed high into the misty night sky. A soft breeze swept past, carrying with it the subtle essence of ancient Adepti magic. Rimuru landed with a smooth glide, letting Ether and Paimon touch down beside him. With a glance toward Ether, Rimuru nodded firmly, speaking in a low voice. I'll leave it to you to handle the Adepti from here. You'll need to find Mountain Shaper and Cloud Retainer, perhaps even Xiao if he's willing to listen. I'm heading back to Liu Harbor to keep an eye on Chilled. We still need more information on the Fatui's plans, and I'd rather not give him too much space to maneuver while we're working on this. Ether and Paimon exchanged glances, fully understanding the task before them. They knew that convincing the Adepti would be challenging, especially with the delicate issue of Rex Lapis, supposed death and the looming Fatui threat. But with Rimuru's steady encouragement, Ether felt reassured. We'll be careful, and we'll keep the Adepti informed, Ether replied, giving Rimuru a confident nod. Good luck, Paimon added with her usual cheerful spirit, though her eyes showed her awareness of the importance of the mission. Rimuru smiled lightly, and with a powerful flap of his wings, he launched into the sky, leaving Ether and Paimon as they began the climb toward Mt. Palau's peak. As he rose higher, he cast one last glance down at them, the weight of the unfolding events resting on both sides. He knew the coming conversations would be crucial for both their plans and their safety. In the sky, with the city lights of Liu glimmering ahead, Rimuru steadied himself for the task awaiting him in Liu. The Fatui were never predictable, and Chilled was an especially tricky opponent. Keeping him within sight was the only way to ensure that their plans stayed a step ahead. Rimuru landed quietly just outside the gates of Liu Harbor, the city lights flickering warmly against the night sky. He let out a sigh, contemplating what the Fatui could be after, their motives clouded as ever. Suddenly, a familiar presence brushed against his senses. You know, Rimuru said calmly, not bothering to turn, I know you're there. Emerging from behind a cluster of bushes, Chilled stepped out, smirking with amusement. Sharp senses, you live up to your reputation, don't you? He chuckled. So, did you manage to meet all the Adepti? Rimuru glanced at him, not fully masking his suspicion. The traveler and Paimon are handling it, he said. Now, why are you here? Oh, me. Chilled feigned innocence, putting on a friendly face. I thought I'd pass on some intel, that's all. His grin widened, clearly enjoying the moment. Rimuru raised an eyebrow, replying with heavy sarcasm, the Fatui, sharing intel. What a glorious day to be alive. Chilled let out a laugh. You've got a sense of humor, I like that. He leaned in slightly, as if sharing a secret. Anyway, I thought you might want to know that the Liu Kixing have hidden away the exuvia. Rimuru's expression shifted subtly. He paused, considering the implications. This could be troublesome. Troublesome, huh? Chilled echoed with interest. Why's that? Rimuru didn't elaborate, keeping his cards close. We're trying to locate the 7 archons. He left it at that, his tone cryptic. Oh, a little treasure hunt for the archons. Chilled mused with a smirk. Sounds fun. I won't press you for details, though. He tapped his chin, giving Rimuru a calculating look. But if you're really intent on finding the exuvia, I could lend you a hand. Rimuru crossed his arms, regarding Chilled carefully. I don't know what your idea of help is, but I'll be keeping an eye on you. Something tells me this isn't just about goodwill. Chilled laughed heartily. Ah, always so cautious. Can't blame you for that. He shrugged, still smiling, though his eyes hinted at hidden motives. But I'll be around if you change your mind. With that, he took a few steps back, as if ready to vanish into the night. As he turned to leave, Chilled called over his shoulder, remember, some of us just want to keep things interesting. Watching him disappear into the shadows, Rimuru sighed, thinking over Chilled's words and what the Fatui were really planning. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he'd have to stay one step ahead of his so-called ally. As Rimuru slipped seamlessly into the lively nightscape of Liu, blending in with the sounds and sights of the bustling city, the scene shifted to a different part of the region, far from the busy streets and flickering lanterns. Here, within the quiet, shadowy depths of a forest bordering Liu's outer regions, Chilled moved through the underbrush with a sense of calm but calculating purpose. The silver moonlight poured through the trees, casting eerie patterns over his path as he walked alone, his mind sharp with plans and predictions. Suddenly, he stopped and spoke with a cool authority that cut through the silence. You can come out now. His voice, quiet yet commanding, rippled through the quiet night, echoing just enough to summon an unseen figure. From the darkness, a figure moved into view, stepping forward with almost ghost-like precision, a Fatui pyro agent. The distinctive mask obscured his face, and a faint glow of pyro energy flickered around him, briefly illuminating the forest floor. Bowing his head respectfully, the agent spoke, "You called, sir." Chilled's gaze was sharp as he turned to face the pyro agent, his expression focused and intense. "How much longer until they're here?" he asked, his voice low but carrying an undercurrent of eagerness that was hard to miss. The pyro agent didn't hesitate, answering quickly, 3 to 4 days at most. They're moving through the sea now and should be in place soon. A slow, predatory grin spread across Chilled's face as he heard the news. The thought of the approaching confrontation was like fuel to his fire, igniting the thrill for battle within him. He clenched his hand into a fist, as if already feeling the rush of the imminent challenge. Good. I can't wait to fight him, he said, his voice filled with barely concealed excitement, his words tinged with the same reckless thrill that always accompanied his greatest battles. The pyro agent remained silent, nodding in acknowledgement of Chilled's enthusiasm, sensing the clear instructions laced between Chilled's words. Chilled's competitive nature was well known among the ranks, he lived for the intensity, and a worthy adversary like Rimuru was a rare opportunity to truly push his own limits. But Chilled wasn't just waiting for the fight, he was preparing, strategizing. His gaze grew colder, more calculating as he continued, prepare everything. We'll have no room for error when the time comes. I want everything in position, and I want everything ready. The pyro agent nodded again, acknowledging the urgency of Chilled's order. Without another word, he vanished back into the shadows, leaving Chilled alone in the moonlit silence of the forest. As the agent's presence faded, Chilled remained, standing alone beneath the quiet canopy of trees. The thrill of the upcoming encounter pulsed within him. Chilled's drive for combat wasn't just about winning, it was about someone who could go toe-to-toe with him, who could give him a real challenge. Rimuru was just that, someone who had earned his respect through skill and tenacity. And this time, Chilled would face him fully prepared, with the full force of his power and plans. After a few moments, Chilled turned, casting one last glance over his shoulder as if looking back at the city in the distance, where he knew Rimuru and his companions were lying in wait, just as eager for answers as he was for battle. With the city gates of Liu just in sight, Rimuru slowed his pace, allowing himself a moment to focus on the plan that had been forming in his mind. He raised his hand and, with a concentrated flicker of energy, summoned 4 clones. Each took on a different appearance. One shaped into the likeness of a typical Liu citizen, blending seamlessly with the crowd. Another transformed into a scruffy dog, perfect for moving unnoticed on street corners and alleys. A third became a small bird, ideal for watching from above without suspicion, and the final clone took on the form of yet another citizen, adding one more pair of eyes to the bustling city. "Stay sharp," Rimuru instructed, his tone calm yet commanding. "Anything suspicious involving the Fatui, or any sign of unrest in the city, report back immediately." Each clone nodded, dispersing quickly and disappearing into the lively crowds of Liu. Satisfied with the precautions, Rimuru cast a glance upward at the moon, which hung luminously over the city, casting a silver light over the rooftops and bustling streets below. Just then, the orb filled with elemental energy that he had been carrying began to glow softly within his bag. He reached in, drawing it out to see a message from Ether. The words shimmered within the orb, confirming that Ether and Paimon had successfully informed the Adepti about Rex Lapis's situation and the Fatui's covert operations. Rimuru's expression softened slightly as he nodded, replying back with his own message. "Well done, Ether. I'm coming to pick you up now." With a determined look, he placed the orb back in his bag, spread his ethereal wings, and launched himself into the sky. The night air was cool and crisp, and as he glided over the winding roads, he kept a vigilant eye on the city below. The lights of Liu sparkled like stars in a field, illuminating the lives of its people, all blissfully unaware of the looming dangers. As Rimuru flew, thoughts raced through his mind, concerns about Ivaraja's presence, the growing number of corrupted monsters, and the Fatui's hidden motives, especially now that they seemed more intertwined with Liu's fate than ever. But at the heart of his mission was the trust he had placed in Ether and Paimon, and the alliance he was carefully fostering with the Adepti and Liu's leaders. Finally, as he neared the mountain range, the flickering glow of a small campfire in the distance caught his eye. There, just where he expected, were Ether and Paimon, waiting with a look of eager anticipation. Rimuru descended gracefully, his wings folding back as he landed. "Rimuru!" Paimon called out, waving her small arms excitedly as Ether looked over, relieved to see him. "I see everything went well on your end," Rimuru said, smiling at them. "Let's get back to the city, there's a lot happening, and we'll need to be ready for anything." As he gestured for them to get ready, he glanced back at Liu, where his clones were already working. With every detail in place, Rimuru felt a surge of determination. He was ready to face whatever the Fatui or fate itself would throw his way. To be continued.